Billie Eilish has had a sensational start to her career. I mean, to have all these Grammys and all this mainstream attention at such a young age, considering, you know, she was 18 when she was getting all this success. I'm pretty sure she was like 16 or 17 when she was making the music, to then have #1 hits, to have all the Grammys that she took home that night. Even she was like, man, do I deserve all these? I don't know. She even said it in one of her speeches. She was shocked as anyone else. It was a crazy way to kick things off, to have all that success so early on. Critical acclaim too. She's got it all at the moment. Of course, comes with its downfalls, as she talks about, which I'll get into on this album, about her image and how people perceive her and all that kind of stuff. Obviously, having all that attention at such a young age, when you don't really know exactly what to do with it, how to handle it, how to respond to the negativity that comes your way, is obviously going to affect your mental health. And she's talked a lot before about her mental health issues anyway. So all of these things, as good as the success can be, do come with their drawbacks. There's a separate conversation to be had, lodged somewhere, about how these young artists get so much success and so much attention and so much fame at a young age that it only really sets them back in the long run. Perhaps a video for another day. Perhaps I will work on that at some point. But I'm just thinking of people like Olivia Rodrigo and kind of worrying for their future, because no doubt she'll be racking up the Grammys next year. And I just think in the long run, having all of this success when you're barely even, you know, an adult, is it good for you? Or is it ultimately just going to have a worse impact on you in the long run? I don't know. I guess we'll see. We've seen celebrities have many breakdowns over the years, and it tends to be the ones that started out very young. So yeah, it's a scary reality, to be honest. Regardless, though, I've waffled on for a bit too long there. I never usually do that, but we do need to get into the music now. Billie Eilish, Happier Than Ever. Ironically, it's sadder than ever, though, in how it sounds and how the music sounds. Oh, so ironic. Of course, an album many people have been anticipating. I, for one, wasn't really that excited, though. The singles for this album did not leave an impression on me at all. In fact, the only one that I'd say was pretty okay was Therefore I Am, which came out quite a while ago. So the ones that were closer to the album's release are the ones that I'm talking about here that really didn't leave much of an impression on me. I think the lyrical idea and the themes behind Your Power are pretty important. Definitely worthwhile talking about. People abusing the power they have to kind of abuse other people. Obviously worthwhile, obviously something that has been known to happen, but the music that it was accompanied by was just so average. The guitar plucking was pretty standard. The singing was fine at best. I wouldn't really say Billie Eilish has the most engaging voice out there, so I think a track like this does need a more potent and poignant vocal delivery, which I just don't think she has. In my reaction, I did say it reminded me a little bit of Phoebe Bridgers, who is an artist I do think is okay. I'm not the biggest fan of Phoebe. I know a lot of people out there love her more than I do, but I would say even Phoebe would have pulled out a more interesting vocal performance than what Billie does here, to be honest. Lost Cause isn't very dynamic or colourful in how it sounds either. It's okay. It's not one of the, you know, worst tracks on the album, but it's certainly a highlight, if I can even call it that, because it has a bit more of an up-tempo beat. But even still, it really doesn't shine when you put it in context with the rest of the album, because most of the album sounds the same. Like, there's very little variation on this one. What made her debut interesting, or what made me say in that review of the debut that I think she has potential and I think there's somewhere for her to go, all of those things that I said in regards to the interesting kind of weird approach she took to tracks like Bury a Friend, for example, have just completely evaporated. She doesn't try any of that on this album, and every song melds together in such a bland way. This is a bit of a struggle to get through, actually. It's an hour long, and when every song is pretty much hitting that same note, it's a tough one. I've seen some interesting perspectives of this album so far where people are saying that she's nailing her sound, she's nailing who she is, this is what she should be doing, she's playing to her strengths. And what strengths are those? Because it's not in the music. Like, you could go to many artists who go for soft, slow moving sounding type stuff, and you'd get better vocal performances and honestly more colourful music. You'd get more interesting instrumentals. You'd perhaps get, you know, string sections coming through. You'd get wonderful, glorious, like chamber pop instrumentals that kind of make the songs flourish. And yet most of these songs are just like whispery, tepid, slow moving nothingness things. I can't even think of a word for it. They just don't do anything. Billie Bossa Nova does attempt something slightly different. It's not really bossa nova. I mean, it tries to be like, you know, this samba bossa nova type instrumental, and yet even when she's trying to do something slightly different compared to many of the other tracks, it's just very limp. And again, it's something you could probably find elsewhere done much better, because it just sounds like she's heard one track in this style one time and thought, well, let's see if I can do it. It's at least a bit more rhythmic than tracks like Getting Older or Everybody Dies, for example. But my God, the bar is very low to hit, to jump over that, man. Like, you don't need to take many steroids to get higher higher than that bar. Oxytocin is another one I wanted to mention, because again, you can see that it's trying to do something a bit different. It feels like the bad guy of the album, although it's not quite as, you know, pop driven, and I certainly wouldn't think it would be as big as Bad Guy, but you can kind of see where those two worlds collide in that sense. But it kind of feels like it's trying too hard to be weird and strange. It doesn't feel very natural to me. It almost feels like she felt like she had to do a song like this because her other album had moments like this on it. But this one just doesn't really come across that well to me. The lyrics are super edgy as well. I think a lot of people called her out on being edgy for the first album, but I wasn't too fussed on that. But I think this track certainly proves those people right, to be honest. I'm just not sure what she's trying to go for. Lyrically, across the entire album, there's like varying degrees of quality, to be honest. I feel like the idea of My Future, for example, is pretty interesting. It's pretty simple. It's sort of just looking to herself in the future and just sort of seeing what she could be like one day, and she loves the idea of what she could be. It's sort of like the antithesis of Future Me Hates Me by the Beths, which is literally the opposite of that, of where, you know, the singer on that song is talking about the future version of being someone that she hates, whereas this one is more of a positive spin. And I just think, considering it is one of the more positive ideas and messages on the album, you'd think the song was going to be given a more positive, uplifting sound, right? Right? But no, it's exactly as stale and as uninteresting as all the other tracks that are as stale and as uninteresting as each other. It just blends in. You'd think this would be a standout, but it just doesn't do that. A stronger vocal presence is needed, Billie. You are fading into the background of every song, you're whispering, and again, someone in the comments needs to explain to me what it is about that vocal style that you can sit through for an entire hour that you find engaging, because after 2 songs, I'm pretty much ready to switch it off, but it just never lets up. It's the same the whole way through. Again, no expressiveness, like jumping out, you know, no words or no themes are being like highlighted by her voice, because she's singing everything in the same way. If you said everything in the same way all the time, you're not going to get your message across, are you? You need to express the important things, or the more you know, emotionally potent parts or what am I supposed to take away from it? Perhaps it's the teacher talking in me here, but I think if I just stood in front of a class all day in the same monotone delivery, we are going to do maths, and now we are going to talk about fractions, and this is 1/4, this is 1/2, this is 3/4, this is 1/2. I think you'd understand that most people in that room, most children in that room, would take away nothing out of it. Maybe that's not a great comparison, but the point I'm trying to make is that you need to just elevate your voice sometimes, please, at least a couple of times. Now, I will accept that it sort of works on Hallie's comment, which has a prettier sound design. There's a bit of a twinkliness going on here. The idea of the lyrics are pretty heartwarming at points, essentially expressing how much the person means to her. She says the line, sleepless nights are better with you than nights could ever be alone, which I think is a pretty poignant lyric. It's still a bit too faint though. I think again she could probably emote more lyrics throughout the song to kind of emphasize how she's feeling, but like I've already said, when you're giving off the same energy for everything, it kind of makes it seem like everything you're feeling is the same, but this song isn't the same as Everybody Dies, so why is she singing both of them in the same way? Like, it's a really odd thing. I don't know what she's attempting to go for. You know, listen to any given Fiona Apple song. I mean, you don't necessarily have to like the music. I mean, I'm sure you probably would if you liked this music. I mean, they're not worlds apart, but the thing that separates them for me though is that what Fiona does will be that she just emphasizes the lyrics, and often she's quite, you know, negative towards the people that have hurt her in her life, and Billie Eilish does a similar thing, but you can at least feel the emotion come through when Fiona has something to say. And I think that's the issue with Billie throughout a lot of this album. It just doesn't feel like there's anything driving her. Not My Responsibility is quite a good example of this, I think, where she takes a different approach in terms of how she's presenting the song. This one's more spoken word driven, and I think a spoken word artist just needs to emphasize things better than she does, but because she doesn't really do it any differently to how she does every other track, it doesn't really feel any different, you know what I mean? Like, I think if her voice was more commanding, or she expressed a bit more anger with some of the lyrics, perhaps it would have gone down better. It's a very important topic. She's talking about how people talk shit about her all the time for wearing certain clothes, for not being womanly enough, or whatever the hell people say on social media, even though she's still like a teenager. You know how people are on social media, they say all kinds of shit. It's an important thing to address, but I just think the delivery and the outcome of the track just could have been so much better than it was, but I just don't get that from the song. And that's right there what the issue is. If you're gonna touch on very important issues and topics, you need to make it more memorable, and I just think often that's Billie's downfall on this entire album. It's just so unmemorable. That's about as much as I can say, really. I think NDA took an interesting approach where it sounds like a Jai Paul track on the chorus, but it's a very fleeting moment, and once again just isn't enough for me to really go, wow, this makes the album good, because it's just a small moment across an hour-long project. I gotta go 4 out of 10. I mean, I don't really enjoy this. This isn't an enjoyable experience for me. It's cohesive for sure, because every track follows a similar formula and a similar pattern and a similar sound and aesthetic, but it needs shaking up, and I think it comes down to Billie's presence. She just isn't as vocal enough as she should be. It's a shame, because I did think her debut was solid and had a lot of potential, but this time around that potential has just been lost for me, and I just don't get much out of this. I just really don't. Please let me know your thoughts in the comments though. I know a lot of people will definitely disagree with this one. This is not going to go down well, but I'm just here to speak how I feel. this to me is not a good album, but maybe you have a different angle to come from. Maybe you believe it's a much better album than I'm giving it credit for. I'd love to hear your thoughts. Thank you for watching. If you agree with me, also let me know. And yeah, have a good day. Subscribe if you haven't already. If you don't already hate me, that would be great. Have a good day and goodbye.